It says, Gadol Torah, Hamevi, Refuah L'chol Chai. It's not saying of Chazal. Greatest Torah that it brings healing to all living things and all living people. So who needs a refuah shlema?
Sarachaya bas Jezaliba, Mashalia bas Chav Menachaya, Mendel Shalom ben Sarifka, Jaffrey, and all of the Chayalim and those who were injured.
Amen. Refuah shlema b'korev mamash. And to one of my deepest, probably most seminal teachers, Rabbi Yitzhak Ginsburg, Rabbi Yitzhak Feivish ben Braina Malka, Zolhaman Refuah Shlema. Lahavan Inyan Halula. You understand? What's the Inyan? What's the meaning? Why? Why do we take this piece of wood? And Minyonav and all of its species. To understand that. And also the Inyan Hananua. Why do we shake it? In a particular way, of course. Hine Mavura b'Mishnas Chasidim. It's explained in a Sefer. Sefer Mishnas Chasidim is a Kabbalistic Sefer from an Italian Kabbalist in Rabbi Emanuel Chai Ricci. It was published in the early 1700s. I don't know anyone who learns it. I don't have a copy of it, but this is where the Alter Rebbe is taking the sort of the starting point of this mimer. There he says in a very brief way, what's the whole teichen? What's the meaning? What are you grabbing a hold of when you're in this and a kavana in all this shaking of the lulav? And he says the following few words, which we will explicate at length, the Alter Rebbe will explicate at length. He says, what does the Sefer Mishnas Chasidim say is the whole purpose of the Daled Minim and the shaking of the lulav? Lahamshir das, to draw down das, and you know it means knowledge, but I'm going to leave it das because he's going to take on and to help us understand the proper meaning of it in this context. Lahamshir das, to draw down das, lenukva dezah. Nukva dezah is malchus of the midos, right? I think the people on this call, tell me if you're wrong, can get in your head the image of the 10 koichos, the Esser koichos in a human being, Abad, Chagas, Nahi, and Malchus, which of course are echoes of the 10 spheros in Hashem, and one of the ways that we understand what God said when he said that he makes man in our image. So the purpose of this is to draw down das, lenukva dezah, to Malchus, as Malchus exists in the Midos, as it stands in the chest. So this is going to be really all about Das, and this is the beginning, before we get into the 4 species, all about this drawing, all the Daled meaning. The lulav is the vehicle sort of for it. They're all placed together with it, but it's all drawn to the heart, which stands in the chest. So it's all about awakening the heart, or in saying in English, taking it to heart. Hashem has yesh levar. So he says, Ayin Sham. See over there, they quoted the language, right? That to draw down the das of nukva of the feminine, which is Malchus, into where it stands in the chest, in the heart. Ayin Sham, see over there. So first he's going to explain to us what is das. Mahu inyan hamshachas das l'nukva. What is das, and what does it mean to draw it down into the feminine quality of Malchus in the heart? You can see it's written, the Atar Shlomo b'ni, in the pasuk, Shlomo my son, da es elokei avicha. Right, David says to his son, know God your father, uvadehu, and serve him belev shalom, and serve him with a complete heart. He says, know him. So the Alter Rebbe asks a simple question. Lechera, at first glance, Yesh lehaven, we need to understand the im pirusha shel das kameshin soivre ha'olam. If the pirush, the explanation of das, is the way the world holds, jehu hayedia kipeshuta, that it's just simple knowing, shel pirush das shehu lashon yedia, just knowing. Imkain, if so, if David wants Shlomo to acquire some knowledge, hayetzorek David lilmed yedia zois, let him teach it to him. Shlomo techila, and he would know it. What is he commanding him? Know the God of your fathers. It's like, wake up. So das is not imparting knowledge. It's wake up. Da es elakei avicha. The mashma, which implies, told you hadavar b'shlomo. The whole thing depends on Shlomo waking up to know. Now, what's we mean to know? The achash tzorech lilnoid, and then afterwards, he has to teach him Hashem that this knowledge of Hashem if it's just about knowledge, then it's not up to Shlomo, it's up to David to teach him this. So what is this idea? And what is it going to help if it means knowledge to command him to know? It's like telling me, no astrophysics. Well, if it's about knowledge, someone has to teach me astrophysics. So this is obviously not about knowledge. It's not going to help. If it's about knowledge, you'd have to first hear it and understand it. So you have to say, the word das is not just, and in our memory you'll see, it's not in the main about knowing, acquiring knowledge. This is something actually that Rabbi Ginsburg taught me years and years ago, that if you want to know the meaning of the word, really the inner meaning and the inner ring of the word, look at its first appearance in the Torah. And the first appearance of the word das is in the intimate relationship between Adam and Chava. That's called das. Adam yoda es ishtoi. She'eno yediyah. So it wasn't a matter of learning something, it was an meaning of hakora, of recognizing that they were two halves of a whole. One was taken from the other. They existed primordially, not primordial, before that, as a singularity. And from that singularity came out a duality, male and female. But recognize, this is, by the way, a total aside, I won't go into this. It's brought Nir Manusi. I don't know if you know him, but he has a very good, I think, exposition on this whole point about mixed gender and sex, and obvious forbiddenness to change the physical sex. But deep within the heart of everyone is this singularity where both male and female exist. And they recognized that they were halves of each other. No one taught them that. They recognized that they were halves of each other. And that was in a bechinas of his spilus haseichel. There was an arousal of consciousness. I'm not going to translate seichel here, meaning intellect, which it obviously is translated in other contexts, but of consciousness, because this isn't about thinking about it. This is about, as he's going to say soon, recognizing something. Well, he said already, in hakora, it's recognizing. Like an ox recognizes its master. And likewise, it says, God says about us, I recognize you. I recognize you. I'm not teaching you knowledge. I recognize you from all the other families of humans on the planet. So there's something essential that gets recognized in Das, right? And back to our Whetstone, the purpose of the Lulav and Esrog is to draw down that essential consciousness, the awareness of the essential consciousness through these Daled Minim. This mimer will be a total opening up of all the Daled Minim together, why they're tied together like this, and what the union of each one of them is. Okay, F good. Okay, this is so. Therefore, I have visited you. I have appointed myself to be your God. Shekol Ela Inyan Hakora. So all of these, the bottom line of it is that we're translating, we want and need to translate das not as knowledge that it becomes learned, but as a recognition of what really is. Now, since you're looking inside, I'm going over to the next page. Kaf Men Gimel, counting down from the top. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The line begins with who. Okay. So when Adam and Chava, or the quintessential male and female who get married under the chuppah, and they recognize their unity and their rightness and their belonging to each other, so then they are drawn one after the other with a continual arousal. In other words, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's always there. I mean, you're busy doing other things, but when you stop and you turn to each other, you're aware of the continual unity, the continual bind that exists between you from before. V'chein haben, so it was another example, a son, a child, she'eder likros la'aviv, who learns at a certain age, without being taught, the son or the child learns that this is his parent and behaves this way in a essentially connected way to the parent. In this case, the son and the father. Why is that? Because the child recognizes in his consciousness, not in his intellect, but in his deeper consciousness, that he is part and parcel of that father or parent. And that's his spilus adas. That's the action, that's the arousal of das. Shad previously, she'ein das, when he was smaller, in the first few months, right, where he didn't have this consciousness, has not yet emerged. It didn't rise up in his conscious brain that this is a parent. In the same way, with Adam and Hava, it's a language, das is a language of recognition. Why are we talking about this? Because, again, we're laying the groundwork here. The whole purpose of the Lulav and Esrog drawing them to the heart is to mamshik, to draw down the awareness of this deep level of heartsidicness or of consciousness and draw it down and raise it up. The beginning is spilus, that it should come from the heart and rise up to the brain. We talk a lot in Tanya, machshava shalat ala lev. So yes, thought rules over the heart, but the heart rules over the mind. In other words, the heart is a deeper, when, it's mentioned in Chassidus, but you don't need Chassidus from this. When a person wants to express something that's deeper or more profound than what intellect or words can say, what do? They cry from the heart. This, of course, is one of the major themes of blowing the shofar that we learned, not necessarily together, but we learned in Rosh Hashanah. The cry of the heart is deeper than the intellect of the mind. And it's called hakora, recognition of, as I said earlier, of what you really are, who you really are, taking to heart the essence of what you are. And recognition, bechinas spilus, with an arousal, shibamoyach, in the brain specifically. As it says, ein kushi elo ladas. There's no ability for intimacy without das. Shibamoyach, dafka kiyadua, as is known. Okay, and all of this will be understood, and this is the point that he makes in this first part of the Maimah. I'm going to skip down to the bottom of this page. The third line down, there's a paragraph begins big words, Behine. Okay. So we're drawing, so now we have a sense, and I'll pause here just to see if you have any comments or questions. We know what das is. And the purpose of the Dalet Minim is to draw down the das, down to Malchus, and lift it up into the heart. Imagine Malchus is, I'm just editorializing here. Malchus is kingship. And what kind of a king rules over a kingdom with his heart? That's Melech HaMashiach, whose heart is in the right place and has his heart united with the heart of all the people to bring out the best and the most heart tzaddik in each and every person. So that's the difference, as Brian Chassidus, between Malchus and Memshola. They both convey a certain kind of rulership, but Memshola is like dictatorship forced upon you, and Malchus, kingship, understands you and brings you toward him and he to you, and there's a relationship. Okay? Okay? Okay. So there's a third line down. Now at the outset, we laid a platform here. Yesh lahaven pirish ve'ini bechinas nukva. Who is this? What is this? Malchus. Malchus of the Midos. Shemedes bechaza, as this Malchus rises up from the bottom and influences the heart. So this is the kingship having a connection with the heart. Because of the Zohar. In the chest, because we're taking this lulav, and that's for constantly to our chest. Dehine bechinas devar Hashem shemayim nasu. No, I'm sorry. Dehine kasiv. It's written in the Bible in Bereshis. It says devar Hashem shemayim nasu. With the word of God, the heavens were made. We'll see how this goes. V'yadu, as is known. All the entirety of bringing into being of all the specifics of all the worlds. The Hamalachim and angels, Adibiyah of the lower worlds, Bria, Yitzira, and Usia. Shekulam nimshechum bechinas dibur ha'elyon. They were all the worlds from Atzilus and all down. That's where Bria is the word creation. That's where creation starts. Atzilus is a more internal world, but the external world, and we're talking about the spiritual world as well as the physical world, of which this planet, which is this galaxy that we're in right now, is the only physical world. All of them are drawn out from God's so-called speech, Dibur Ha'elyon. And we're going to explore here the union of speech as a metaphor for creation. As is written in Sefer Yetzirah, this is a sefer from Avram Avinu. They all were established in his mouth, meaning bepeh, through his mouth, God's mouth. The Hainu Yud Maimoris, these are the 10 utterances, the klal in general. And is written, V'yemer Elakim, right? God said, Elakim said, Yehi or, let there be light. Ukiyadua. And this is known, the Drosh Zazal, in the interpretations of our sages, the Gam HaMalachim, and also even the angels, Michael, Gavriel, Nivra'u mebechinas hadibra elyon. They were all came into being from the metaphor of supernal speech. And I'm not sure how he's going to explain, but the metaphor, what is the metaphor? That, well, he will. I think I remember that he will. Okay, why is speech the metaphor for creation? Okay, Shabbabeis Maimoris. First, we had the two Maimoris, let there be light and let there be a rakia. And he doesn't explain this. The light is the Or Ein Sof, which goes on and on and on forever. But for a creation to exist, there has to be a limitation, and that's the rakia. So emanation and limitation work together so that the limited worlds, and there can be worlds only through limitation, otherwise everything is just all Hashem, have in them, in their limited state, the quality of the Ein Sof. The Ein Sof, the Or Ein Sof, is invested in the individual creations. And these are called the 10 Maimoris. It says, first of all, we created that the birds should be flapping. Oif Zemechoil. Who is this bird? This is the angel Mechoil. And so all of the spiritual beings have a physical counterpart. The birds down here below to Mechoil, and each one in its own way. By way of a metaphor, Adibra Tachnon. Let's look at speech by a person, and that will help us understand a bit of what it means, the metaphor of speech by God. So in Odom Tachnon, in a person down here below, we see, what do we see? We see that the power of speech, which is in the mouth, depends on the breath that's in the heart. Every breath, every letter has a breath informing it, and then it's articulated. It happens to be the 5 Gevuras, 5 articulated powers of the mouth, the tongue, the palate, the throat, the lips, and the teeth. So, but it all originates in the Hevel Halev, right? So hopefully you're seeing a little connection. We talked about Das is in the heart. We're raising Malchus to the chest, and that's where the heart is, and that's where the breath begins. The Hevel Halev, the Hainu Bechaza Halev, which is in the chest, where the heart is. Ki Nekev Yesh Bechaza, there's a hole in the chest of the heart, right? These are the blood vessels which come to the heart and from the heart. And the ones that we're talking about raising from below to above, that's the oxygenated blood that pumps out from the heart to all parts of the body, analogous to the way the breath, the warm, heated breath from the chest rises up into the mouth to articulate. It comes from the Hevel Halev, from the breath of the heart. And then it goes, we're talking here about speech, it goes out the mouth, and that's where the power of speech comes into play. And he says, the wondrous thing about this is, we see in actuality, excuse me, that when a person's heart is full of joy, the toiv and goodness, he's friendly, he goes around to everybody, and he's talking to everybody, and he's just much more loose when he's loose in terms of being able to, wish people well and give bruchas, because something is rising from his heart, which influences the quality, maybe not so much the quantity, but the quality of the koyach hadibur. And the dibur comes out in a breath, a B-R-E-A-D-H-T, in a wide way. Because the heart is giving out breath, from the windpipe, which comes up from the chest. And that's when a person is very, very happy, when the breath of the heart comes out in a very broad and joyous way. I'm skipping now over to page. So we have, let's just say where we are. I'm going to go to the next page, Lahavin. Where we are now, we've talked about the Daled meaning coming to the chest. And we said that's a drawing down or an illumination, drawing down meaning drawing down and out, the illumination of our essential heart-tzedek connection with Hashem, and our heart-tzedek connection with ourselves. So it's meant to enliven the heart, these Daled meaning. It's meant to draw down godliness from above and touch our heart, and are meant to be touched. And with that, we're going to move on. What do we do after we're touched? We touch other people, which is called spreading the light. So we get illuminated, right? And we have this spark within us. The Daled meaning are to draw it up and up and up and out so that it comes out and spreads. And this next piece really will focus more on spreading the light. So let me pause again. Any questions or comments so far?
So far, what I'm connecting to in terms of the Arba meaning, when we talk about the lips and speech. So I think right away in terms of that looks like the lips, in terms of
which one looks like the lips?
Is that Hadassim?
Yeah.
I think that looks like the lips.
They're the lips. Exactly.
And so I feel like, okay, so that's the lips. We know that the esrog is the heart, and we're bringing them together so that there should be the consistency that what's in our heart should come to and through our lips.
Right.
And when we talk about that part of our body, so we know, that yes, we have the spine, but I guess what I'm thinking about in terms of breath, my question is, so what part of the Arba Minim is the breath?
What part of the Arbor? I'm thinking, because he's going to explain, and I know how he explains all of the four. Uh, he's going to explain each one of them with a different kind of unity in terms of the layers of leaf on the lulav, what you just said, the lips and the unity of the adasim, and he's going to explain the ravas and as well the esrog. It seems to me, and I'm just saying this, it seems to me that what's the corresponding to the breath is the motion. The motion. Remember, we do all this. We bring down and then down
Okay,
and
that
down.
makes
But I'm just saying that. I'm just
sense.
saying that. I don't know if I'm right,
Okay.
but he doesn't discuss it. But it seems to me that could be. If you find something on this, tell us all. Okay.
Will do.
All right. Okay. So this always begins on page Tuf Mem Hey, if you're following along, the first big paragraph. Ulahavin bir hadavorim. To understand now, spreading the light, which maybe I'm right, because we're going to talk about bringing that heart, that drawing down to the heart and bringing it up. So how do we spread the light? In Tehillah yesh lahavin, so there's a little introduction here. Tehillah yesh lahavin beklalis inyan hananui. And maybe that's it. Let's talk about the shakings. And we shake it, the shisha ruhais, the 6 directions, right? North, south, east, west, up, down. Not in that order. But we do shake in those 6 directions. Dafka. And specifically, Mizrach, east, Ma'ariv, Tzofan, Gdorim, Maila, Umata. The 4 horizontals and the 2 verticals. 6 dimensions. And these 6 dimensions in other places correspond to the 6 midos, each one of them. He's going to correspond them differently in this particular mimer because we're going to associate them with the 6 nanuim of all because they're all moving together. Kihine, it's known. The bechinas amidos the zah, the midos of Zer Anpin, these are the midos of the Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferes, Netzach, Yesod, and Malchus. Hein Vav, they are 6, right? Pagas, Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferes, that's 3. Netzach, Yesod, another 3, is a Vav. And in other places, it brings down, of course, the Vav is like the lulav, which is vertical, it's shaped like a Vav. Now he brings a new idea, new to me when I first heard this. Each one of the six includes all the others. If we're talking now about midos, 6 midos, each one includes all the others. He's going to give an example. If you take the midah of chesed, and you can see how it includes the midah of gevurah. I'm just using this as an example. V'nikra, and when chesed includes gevurah, it's called gevurah shebechesed, the gevurah of chesed. This, of course, takes huge prominence in Sfiros HaOmer, where all of them are included with each other. I know they're a mashal, and he gives a mashal for this. How to see, for instance, chesed of gevurah. The gevurah is included in the kindnesses. So one example is Yuridas Hagashamim, the falling of rainwater. Sheshoresh Hagashamim nidvos shel chesed. The falling of water is in the nadava. It's a gift. Chesed gives out. Chesed gives forth. It's a giver. And that's the inyan of chesed. And it's bracha, right? Geshem nadavis, a rain which is a nadav. It's an offering, a gift. V'nikra gishmei bracha, and it's called rain of bracha. V'hein yordin begavura. Now, to be a bracha, this water has to come with gevura. Pirish, meaning what? The gevura bechinas tzimtzum. Gevura, if I have my spread out hand, when I close it, that's a gevura. I contract it, right? So, Ainumashim is chalkin letifin tifin, that which the water is divided drop by drop by drop. The water is chesed, and the gevura, to close it up so that it comes down drop by drop and drop, is a gevura. V'zeh hatzimtzum, and it's a contraction. B'yis it divides the stream of water into pieces, parts. And hubishbil sheyar ve'es oretz, and the reason for that is that so it will water the earth and not flood the earth. V'toiled v'tatzmiach, in order that the earth should bring forth growing things and sprout. V'im hoya yoreh b'shetef, if it were to come down just as a stream, pure chesed, there would be a flood on the earth. You do it, as is known. This contraction is called the gevura shebechesed, because it's an enabler of the kindness to be useful. I'm going down a few more lines. The line now begins with Oisei Amen Bezeh, over on the left. Nekach Yuvin Lamayla. Just as this, there was a mashal for water, chesed, and gevura chesed down here below. So this pertains to godliness as well. Chesed Elyon, with regard to God's supernal kindness. Sheyesh b'chinas gevura shebechesed. In God's, these are our 10 koichos reflect, as I say, His 10 spheros, and in the 10 spheros also there's gevura shebechesed. Lema'at uletzamsim ora chesed, to diminish and to contract the light of chesed. She'enu tzimtzum etzad midos adin. This contraction that God makes, this condensation, contraction, this diminution, however you want to call it, is not, it's a gevura, but it's not gevura in midos adin. Right? Often gevura is associated with din, strictness. And strictness. And that itself is used as an example. I've mentioned this many times probably in other places. The strictness of a parent reaching out to grab his child so that he doesn't jump the light and ongoing cars come in his way. That's a kindness, right? But it's a strictness that brings him back. So this is not midas adin, ba'inish. This is not din and punishment. On the contrary, bishvil chesed ubrocha. It's a contraction for the sake of bringing about a kindness and blessing. V'nikra gevuras mimtukas v'chasodim. And this is what's called sweetening the gevuras in the kindnesses. You'll hear that expression a lot in Chassidus, sweetening the gevuras, which is, that expression is more like you've got a gevura, now let's sweeten it with chesed. This is you've got a chesed, and let's gevura it for the sake of delivering the kind of kindness that we want. Now, 4 lines up from the bottom. In the same way, why are we talking about this? I mean, just to reflect, because there are 6 species here, right? 6 midos, 6 species. And they're tied together. And that's the metaphor of them being inter-included. They're all bound up together. Except the Esrog, which comes together, but it's not bound together. We'll see that perhaps later. So in the same way, just as there's a gevura b'shebechesed, there's inter-inclusion of all the midos within each other. Shebemidas the zod atzilus, in the midos, and as they exist in the midos of the world of atzilus. However, in order for there to be inter-inclusion of midos within each other, there has to be some intermediary, right? Chesed and gevura are opposites. They're on opposite sides of the configuration of the Odom Kadmon, the supernal man, the primordial man, right side and left side. There has to be, for them to interoperate the way we've spoken about, there has to be something that serves as an intermediary or an interface. Ade Hamamutza. This I actually learned first from Simon Jacobson, who always translated mamutza, which is often plain and simple, is translated an intermediary interface to allow both things to come together. It's like, an example of this, every two cells, each cell has a wall, and yet they get together because certain things traverse the cell wall and certain things don't. So that wall has a twofold characteristic. It blocks and it relates. So there has to be something that has both characteristics. A character. In Chesed, it's a characteristic of Gevurah, and something in Gevurah that's a characteristic of Chesed. There has to be a mamutza. Hakalulam yachad, which contains both of them together. What is it? Guess what? It's the Ora Das. Das is the middle kav, right? And from a top but to bottom perspective, it integrates Chokhmah and Bina, and then that's above to below, and then from below to above, it integrates Netzach and Hoid. It integrates Chesed and Gevurah. Yeah, Chokhmah and Bina on the right and left in the mind, and then Chesed and Gevurah on the left, and in between is Das. So Das is the integrator. That's another way of understanding what we said at the beginning, that the purpose of the Lulav and Esrog is to Hamshachas Das, to bring integration into the heart, so that all our separate qualities become bound together, like the Lulav and Esrog, and we can take them all to heart and take ourselves as a whole, with all our interesting and not so interesting characteristics, accept all of us. I saw something recently, it's actually from Rabbi Ginsburg. He was quoting the Baal Shem Tov about Shuva on Yom Kippur. And he said that you could get carried away with feeling about how bad you are. But that's not the way of Chassidus, starting from the Baal Shem Tov, even earlier, the Kabbalists. It's not the way. You have to be the Simcha, right? Simcha Shel Mitzvah is the power. So he says, so what do you do? He said, yes, you're sorry. And you feel sorry. And you're genuinely sorry. That's the first point the Rambam says in Shuvah, to recognize the things that you've done that are not so and make a firm determination to fix them. But the second piece, he says, is interesting. And be confident and know that when you step into Achas B'Shana, when you step into Yom Kippur, you're stepping into the realm of the Holy of Holies, right? Because the whole culmination is the kohen in the Holy of Holies. Achas be'achas, achas b'shayim, achas b'shleish, etc., etc. All of you, with all your distress, with all of your not so is accepted on the day of Yom Kippur and goes up into the one. So this is another, that's Yom Kippur. We passed Yom Kippur, right? But now we're doing it just the other way around. The exposed Mida is not sorrow. The exposed Mida is Simcha. But at the same inyan is happening, but in a totally different way, which is all the attributes, all the midos, all the right, left, and middle are coming down, 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 and raising up our heart, and so that we will have genuinely a Yom Tov of expressed Simcha. He is hiskalalis b'chol Mida, and that all the midos will be inter-included. Shehiyah al yedei b'chinas hamamutza, which is through the intermediary, v'hu b'chinas ora das, the light of das, hamispashet b'chol hamidos, that this light of das, which sits right at the center, is flowing into all the other midos. Okay, with that, yeah, go ahead.
1 second. So I just want to make sure I'm following the mashal correctly. So then the da'as is like the cell membrane, that's the interface?
Das is the interface, yes.
Okay.
Das
So that's
is
like
the
the cell
interface.
membrane.
That's right.
Okay.
It's the cell membrane is too horizontal here, but yeah, that's it. It's the bottom rights and the top rights are all being right and left are being integrated in the heart. Right.
So if that's the case, then actually, I'm coming to, I don't know if this will make sense or not. But when we breathe and I'm thinking really projecting and singing. So what
Yeah.
happens is in general with breathing, so we have the oxygenated blood, the blood that no longer has the oxygen. We have the interface that's within the heart. And so
Yeah,
that
that's true. The heart is making the transformation between the,
and then not only is it a transformation, but when we talk about the contraction, so the diaphragm has to contract and it has to expand in order for us to breathe. And when someone truly breathes properly and uses their vocal cords and they're speaking above their vocal cords in order to project and actually sing, then the voice carries up, not just out of the mouth, but it
yeah,
they found that with true professional singers, when they
yes.
did autopsies, lo aleno, on professional singers, they found a cavity almost if you picture like a dolphin and where their blowhole is. So it's above the forehead. It's literally right where the tefillin shel rosh is placed. That cavity is where the sound projects from. So almost like it's coming above the head, like when we're taking from all of and integrating all of the qualities, so six qualities, and the malchus rises to above the head. That's the projection.
Well, that's Gewalt. He doesn't go there, but it works because remember, Malchus is the bottom, right? But
Hmm.
Malchus is a middle calf. It's in the middle, right? And we quoted one thing from Sefer Yetzirah earlier. Another almost famous quote from Sefer Yetzirah is that the end is wedged in the beginning and the beginning is wedged in the end. So all those middle kavim are, number one, they're interfaces for what's on the right and the left, but Malchus has no right and left. Malchus becomes the Kesser. So if you go from bottom up in the middle kavim, you have Malchus, you have Yesod, you have Das, and you have Kesser. Kesser is counted as one of the 10 when Das is not counted. So that flow goes right up to above the head. Now, what you're saying, anatomically, I've never heard before, but that's quite consistent with the Kabbalistic model that there's actually some imprint in the head. But that's the middle cut. It brings together, reconciles, balances, brings strength that doesn't exist and quality that doesn't exist in either of them separately, and it brings it up and up and up and up. All right. So we're going to now start. We've got 15 minutes, and we're going to continue. We have we have another session on this Holomoid, right? So we're now going to start on the Daled Minim, each of the Daled Minim. And of course, they're all bound together. No surprise, because we've been speaking about the boundedness, the bindedness. Okay, we're on page Tuf Mem Zion for those of you who are following along. Top of the page. Ume'ata, now, at this point in the mimer, Yesh Lahavin, we need to understand, or there is to understand, we will understand, however you want to translate it either way. Shoirish Inyan Prativ Hadalid Minim, the root of the topic of the specific 4 species. Lulav, Hadas, Harava, the Esrog. Loma al Yedei Dalid Minim Halola. Why did God pick these 4 things? Dafka specifically. And why is it that it's specifically these 4 things which will nimshach bechinas hamshacha hanal, which will draw down that drawing down shachas adas, right, into malchus, and then raise up malchus to the heart? Why them? The Succos is written. Well, he says where the Torah tells us it's specifically them. It says lekachtem lechem, you should take for yourselves pri eitz hadar. That's the esrog. It's important to look at the words because he's going to darshan it. Pri eitz hadar. Hadar will be talked about. the Chafetz Tamorim, and that's the lulav, date tree leaves that are on top of each other very tightly. The Onaf Es Avois and the Adasim, the Arav Es Nachal, and the willow reeds. So why these four? The thing you do is known. Shebechinas Hamshachas Or Ein Sof, the level of drawings down of the light, which is infinite, the infinite light, only comes where there is unity. That's a mouthful in itself. I mean, obviously, we're going to tie these things together, but without yet going to the specifics of what's tied together, unity. That's the whole deal. Right? Kol Yisrael, all Jewish people are fit to live in one sukkah. So, it symbolizes unity, both in the sukkah, which we'll speak about, I think, near the end of the Maimer, and in his Daled Minim. And he says that there is no drawing down of the light of the Ein Sof except in a place of unity. Dafka, specifically. Dahainu b'mokem sheyesh achdus, in a place where there is simple unity. I mean, to me, this is, a total editorial at the moment. I'll be brief. One of the most amazing sign, or amazing is not the best word, but poignant is a better word, signs to me about how close we are to Yemois Mashiach, this Galus of Mashiach, is the unity that has been exhibited and continues to be exhibited amongst the Jewish people in the land of Israel. The left and the right, the coming together of people who don't even believe in God, at least said that, crying Shema Yisrael and putting on tefillin. There's a sense, and if you see, as I'm sure all of you do, because they come into your WhatsApps and your Instagrams without asking, it's just incredible, the energy of Achdus that's being generated. And Achdus brings down Yichud. Achdus, unity amongst us, brings down the singularity of God. And here we are in a time, Sheyesh Achdus, where there is Achdus. And if you want a revelation of the Or Ein Sof, it can only be in a place where there's a unity, and not in a place where there's separation. This to me is a huge lesson in everyday life. Every meeting I go to, or every project that I'm in, or every time I walk in the door coming home from work, it's an opportunity. What is it going to be? An experience of, I don't agree with you. Well, so what? Or are we going to find a way to create unity with each other and get on the same page and do something that expresses that unity? And that brings the Or Ein Sof. End of editorial. Key, the Bechinas Achdus, when it comes to this category, this level of what we call Achdus, unity, when it comes to that, Shehi Bechinas Hiskalulus, which is, what is unity? It's the inter-inclusion we've spoken about. This is an interesting thing. It isn't just two things that march in the same parade. There's two things which are actually infusing each other, and it could be with totally opposites. Well, male, female, there you go, right from the beginning, right? Infusing each other and growing with each other from the fusion of each other's opposites. So Shehu Bechinas Hiskalulus, that's called inclusion or inter-inclusion. Azai then, and only then I'll put in, that's the only way that there can dwell the light of simple unity. And let there be one inside of one. In other words, that each one is a one, a singularity, but let these singularities interface with each other and influence and infuse each other. Aval b'mokem apirud, on the other hand, in a place of separation, shehu b'chinas hischalkus, division, lo yishkan shama, or achdus. There does not dwell there the light of unity, apeshuta, simple unity. The simple unity, the simplest unity is Atzmus Ein Sof, the essence of God Himself, about which you can say nothing, describe nothing, and we call it nothing. We call it ayin, because it's utterly simple, no facade, no demarcation. Therefore, mibnei zeh hatam, for this reason, the reason of pirud, since it's the opposite of the dwelling of the Or Ein Sof, so for that reason, nechrav bayasheni, the second temple was destroyed, right? Because of sinos chinam, because of separation amongst ourselves. I mean, it's such a simple thing. If people would just open yourself up, and all of humanity. I mean, we was struck this year by the Haftorah in Shachris, in Yom Kippur from Isaiah. You probably all know this. It was famous for this. He said, "This that you call this a fast that you're not eating. If you want to really fast, meaning put yourself aside and open your hand to the poor." And he goes on and on and on, and give strength to each other. That's a fast, meaning that's depriving yourself of your ego and being able to see through that to the essence of who you are, which is the essence of all of us. And the lack of that, or for the lack of that, is Nechra Bayasheni. The second temple was destroyed because of separation, of unreasoned hatred with no reason. Shehu Bechinas HaPirid, which is separation and division. There it's not possible, and there wasn't any dwelling of that simple unity of Atzmus or Ein Sof, of the essence of the light of the Infinite One. In these four species, each one of them expresses each one separately. Not only that they're coming together, but each one of them separately expresses a quality of unity. Okay, so first he takes the lulav. The lulav. So what's the lulav? Kol olav, all of its leaves, miskalan umisaktim. They all are tightly bound together. When you go buy a lulav, people look for a tight one, where it's bound together and where the tip is tight together. And so it's not just a shtick. It's panemius Torah. It's a secret of the lulav that it must show in its physical manifestation this kind of unity of boundedness together. The oil and yachad, and it's like the leaves are all together. The achdus achas with one singularity. Im hashidra with the spine. The kulam the vukim, and he's looking at his lulav, and he's saying, look how they all cling to each other. And how they are united one with the other. Guf achas, as if they're one body. This is Adam and Chava before the split. One body. Vegam, and also, so that's the unity that's emblemized by the lulav. Vegam hahadas, and we have the hadas, the rabbis. That's the hadas. Olav meshulshalim. So if you look at the hadas, what happens is you got three leaves, but they all come out from one point. They all come out from one point. The hainu plata trofim bechad. There are three separations, but they're all bound together. Bechad kina, in one stem. Vidu as is known. Shehu bechinas hayika behiskalalis. This is a unity and inclusion of gimel alin yachad. So the first was the simple unity. The lulav is the simple unity. It is tight. It's not meant to show separation. This, of course, shows separation. Three leaves, but they're united at their root. So there are a bunch of different people, and they are different, separated, but we're bound as a people. We're all also bound in each of us individually. We have different characteristics, each with different personae that we manifest in different situations, but they're all coming from the singular point. And if we were to be aware and conscious of what that singular point is, that would influence the quality of each of the characteristics or personae or the manifestations that we show to the world. So that's that. Gimel Yan Yachad. V'gam nikra anaf eitz avos. And it's called a branch, a tree of avos, ibnei she'anafov choifin zeh yes etzu, because the leaves are choifin, they're folded over on the stem. Shehu moeder hayichud, this shows on a yichud, shemechaper al chaveru, each leaf is clinging to the other one. Hachenir kechifui akas, so that they seem like one bundle. Gasha kol echad oile al gav, they seem like one bundle as one lies on top of the other, al gav chaveru, on top of its neighbor. Kiyadua, as is known. The lekach nikra avois, therefore it's called avois. And I'm not sure, I mean, avois also means thick, but I'm not sure if that's what he means. But they're called avois because they're clumped together, bound together tightly. Then you have another kind of unity, which is arove nachal. These are the willows that grow in willow, like you've ever seen them when you go into the country or into swamps or near swamps, you see willows. They're all coming up individually. Arave nachal. In the Nikra Gemara, they're called in the Gemara, but Sekta Shabbos, he says over there, we'll skip that, they're called in Gemara Shabbos after the parenthesis, achvina. Lefi, why it's an Aramaic word. Lefi, shegadlim ba'achus, they grow together. The hainu shegadlim bechibur udivech yachad. They grow together, but not on top of each other or bound together, but they grow together, kirayim ahuvim, be'achva, like friends who are bounded by love. They exist in the same neighborhood, and they get along with each other. So, and each of these unities, as I'm learning them with you, strike me as very what's the word I'm looking for? They're all conveyed in the way the human being is constituted. There's a singular point, the nefesh elokis, in which everything is contained, but in a very primal manner. It doesn't express anything, any multiplicity whatsoever, right? Then there are layers of our consciousness and our seichel that come into being from that primal one. There's different layers, but they're all part of us. And you could go further, and there are different personae that I express at different times of day or in different, but they're all part of me. That's the brotherhood of me, myself, and I. I mean, you could go on with this. So even the willow trees, which stand separate, different personae from different situations that I'm in, or that we're in, but they're all coming from some deep singular source. So they reveal in the fact that these personae don't argue with each other, that they're all part of the same you, they indicate a brotherhood, and that kind of scholars. And then you have the esrog. And we'll start the esrog. I don't know if we're going to finish, but it's a good place to start and start again. The esrog. Shenikra pri etz hadar. And we'll say one thing about the esrog, and then we'll continue with it the next time. It's called pri etz hadar, which simply means a fruit of a tree of beauty. But he takes the word, not he, this is rooted much before the Alter Rebbe. He brings forth that which is rooted centuries before. Mipnei shedor be'ilana, b'shana l'shana. The esrog has a very strange, unlike any other fruit, a quality, hadar. It dwells on the tree during the whole year. And I'm not sure if he's going to say this in this mimer, that even in the winter, it gets some life force from it, which contributes to its growth. So all 4 seasons contribute to its being what it is. It's not like other fruits, which they don't stay on the tree, right? And they ripen and they get used after they fall to the ground or when you pick them. But the esrog is hadar shedor be'ilana b'shana b'shana. And I'm going to stop there. I'm going to leave us all hanging just for the interest. So what kind of unity does that show? We'll start there and we'll get a check mark here. Because we only have one other time to learn this, because we're only doing this once a week. So Monday, what? Monday Chol Hamoed. So, any hanging questions?
Yes.
No, no. Oh,
Many
yes.
thinking questions, but my primary question then is, so when we do take the Arba Minim,
Yeah.
we haven't gone through the whole mimer. What can we take with us as we are taking the Arba Minim? What kavanas can we enhance?
Well, you'll have to come back next week. I'm not going to tell you.
Same
But
time.
there are going to be a number of days between now and Monday that we
Well,
will.
how about this? Tell me, let's talk to each other about what we've gleaned so far that we can take.
Okay, so far, I know that I'm certainly, just as every year, taking all kinds and taking all of the qualities within myself, appreciating all of the people within Klal Yisrael, and that we're all bound together. And then it's from a place of intimate knowledge of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in terms of our relationship, that we want us bound up with him, because that's the da'as. And that we're taking and that we're bringing it all in, physically in, as we take before we shake. So that's it.
We bring it in, we take before we shake. That's a good one.
Okay.
All right. You have more to say? Anybody else? I'm inviting anybody to say. But if you have more, go right ahead. Jonathan.
I think that Rabbi Cook, Zechron B'Avraham, mentioned that same analysis or similar one. He said that the different minim that we're using represent the 4 types of Jews, and they have to be unified together in the worship of the Kadosh Baruch Hu. That's if memory serves. I think Rab Cook.
Do you remember what the 4 types of Jews are?
No, one was
okay.
The smell, but I don't remember all the different parts you used. But one was the reach, and it said the esrog represents. I think that was the. But I think the esrog was complete. Can't remember all of it, but it's one that has the reach, the smell, the scent, and he said together it's the 4 type of yidden that were coming together and worshiping Hashem.
Okay, good.
I think the esrog without pagam represented the shlimus. I think that was supposed to be the yid that represented had all the elements in it, But I think there are 4 different types of yidden that were brought together to worship Kadosh Baruch Hu, if memory serves.
Great.
I think that was a mess a long time ago that spoke about.
Seema, did you want to say something? Welcome. Maybe not.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi. So nice to finally be at class. I usually work tonight, but I wasn't working, so I was showing. But when you had mentioned that Das, I just kind of going back, I'm just trying to put it together. That Das is the interface between Chesed and Gevurah. I think of Das as integrating things that we may understand, but we may not be able to really integrate it into our life. So Das is that place where we actually doing what we learned. Like, for example, if somebody learns all they can about smoking, and they see how terrible it is for them, until they actually quit, they don't really have Das. So this integration of like this information, and then you just integrate it and actually do it. So I'm trying to actually put this together with, I guess, uniting. I guess it's like partly understanding that we're unified, like coming in with that Bina, that we're really unified with this, ultimately with this, like real, in the beginning, it's really, we're part of the source of oneness. We all have our individual traits, and how we can sort of like integrate it all together, I guess, for Succos is at like incorporating this Das by I think it's just like partly contemplating on this, and also getting your heart to be in a good place in the holiday, and having a desire to unify with others. Right.
As you started at the beginning, it's not something that you have to get taught. is something that you have to bring forth from within you. And these Daled Minim and the Sukkah, we're going to speak about the Sukkah, of course, at the end of this. They're instruments. They're I want to say helpers, but I want a better word than helpers. They're vehicles. They're instruments for bringing forth that which is in you in the first place. That's Das, right? Back to Adam Yodas Chava. They recognized something that was there. They didn't have to be taught about it, but that experience caused them to recognize each other. That the Hakora, that's the big word he uses there. And so these Daled Minim, and all sitting in the Sukkah, or tomorrow when I go to work and somebody in my office is going to say something that I could find offensive, in a sense that you're offending me, you're stepping on me, or I'm just using an example. It happens often, not necessarily to me, but I see it amongst people, like at work. People are preserving their own Dalet Amos. I've got my spot and you're infringing on it. Well, there's something much greater going on. Yes, not infringing, but combining with each other in order to bring out the best in each other, right? Oh boy, I remember, this is an old one, a song from Joni Mitchell. All I really want to do is bring out the best in me and you. And that's what I want to do. I don't have to be taught that. If I'm open and I let it flow, and I utilize the mitzvahs to make that connection with Hashem, then what's naturally in me springs forth. And that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right. So you're saying that it naturally comes out when we have the physical lulav and all the four species.
Yeah.
And then when we add the esrog,
Mm-hmm.
it's like the mitzvahs, it represents mitzvahs and Torah learning, I believe.
Right. And then
it binds, it almost like elevates all the four species, adding the esrog.
And then we add the Sukkah, which contains not only the four meaning, but a bunch of people with four meaning, or it could be at night without but all these separate people coming from guests all over the world, some of the people have never met each other, invited, as I said, there's a chazal, halavai, that the Yidden should sit in one Sukkah, because we are designed for that. We are designed to be one people with one God.
Shechinat Hashem. They said the Sukkot.
Yeah, absolutely.
They said the clouds of glory, Yinei Kavod, that were in the desert when Hashem Kadosh with the Shekhinah engulfed us, as they said, is represented by the Sukkah to a degree today.
Yeah,
years ago.
So look, it's something that the mimer like this is meant to open our channels of mindfulness about this. But it's interesting thing, isn't it, that we're learning, and really you could say this about all Chassidus, we're learning when we learn Chassidus how to tap the things which are inherently ours in the first place.
Exactly.
Rabbi,
well said.
I'm sorry. I think it was Fasames that said, four different types of Jews they're inseparable. They all have to come together. Those that are, have a reach and not a tam. Those in Fasames talked about it. The esrog is supposed to be the complete. The others, it's an have a, and we have to be together. We're all integral parts.
Yeah, we're all integral parts. We're a greater whole. Yep. All right.
I didn't interrupt.
No, you didn't interrupt. You added. Thank you. And let's just wish each other a good Yontif. Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.
Simcha.
I used to joke and say I don't want happy Hags. I want a good Yontif. But I won't say that.
Okay.
Happy
Good
Good
Yeah, Chag Sameach. Good Yontif.
And we'll see you, Mr. Shem, next Monday. We will continue with the esrog. Well, where are we continuing with? The esrog, living on and then the sukkah.
Beautiful.
Okay.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Have a good week.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.